And welcome, Justin. Thank you for your time and making some time to chat with us today. Justin, why don't you give everyone a little bit of an overview on who you are, what you've been doing, because I know you've been up to some pretty awesome stuff over the last few years.
Yeah, so my name is Justin Michael, and I guess it's fun to say that I'm a futurist. I always wanted to be a digital prophet because there's this guy named David Shing or Shingy who worked for AOL. He had big hair like Bono from U2, and he just sits there and he prognosticates about where tech could go. And he's a digital prophet. And I thought that's what I want to be on the bucket list. So I do futurism for tenbound.com and vendor neutral, and there's these consortia for sales, marketing, and operations tools. And I just sit there and wax philosophic about how our marketing and our sales tech could do better. I worked in sales for 20 years. I worked for Salesforce, LinkedIn, Sean Parker, a dozen different startups. I worked up to be a VP of sales and a regional VP of sales in these fast-moving software as a service companies. Along the way, I developed a series of methods and techniques that helped me to drive new business, to crack the top of the funnel, to kind of get someone interested and to come in. I picked up a mentor along the way who's none other than Tony J. Hughes, who wrote The Joshua Principle and comboprospecting.com. You can go there, check out the book. I heard he was a guest. And he and I, it was great. Different generations. He taught me about strategic selling and Miller Hyman and the technology wars for CRM in Asia Pacific. And I taught him about social marketing and social media and some of the new realms. And we kind of collaborated on different methods. And these days I have my own consultancy. I've left working directly for tech companies and I'm consulting companies all over the world. And I'm training and teaching people how to use email more effectively, automation of calls and emails, video prospecting, different methods of calling frameworks. There's different persuasion and neuroscience mechanics. And so, yes, I'm one of these talking heads now on LinkedIn who has a book. So I've joined the ranks of 6,000 other people. But I have thematically posited that, if 2010 was about the supply chain, the Henry Ford model, that's a guy named Aaron Ross wrote a book called Predictable Revenue. He said, well, the people that open shouldn't close. So you have these SDRs, these sales development reps, and that's 600,000 people. That'll be 2 million people. Well, I figured out that for the 2020s, it's more like I'm trying to be the Tony Stark
Mm.
because the Jarvis Iron Man suit. Now you're sitting there, maybe you have a small business. Well, you might have Gmail and Excel and Slack and Zoom, and wow, you have this tech stack. You didn't even realize it. And all the social media and LinkedIn. So even if you're not spending $1, you're actually spending a lot. You got, cable modem. You're paying Google. You're paying Facebook. You are, because if you don't think you're paying them, you're the product. If you think of the social dilemma, right? So you're involved in tech and tech stacks, whether you like it or not. And what I'm saying is, whatever you're sitting in, if you can use that technology better, it gives you an edge, right? And so that's what my book is about with Tony Hughes, coming out June of next year. You can pre-order it this year in November. It's called Tech Powered Sales. Achieving superhuman sales skills, which I tried to do. I failed miserably many times, but I did get some really cool results too, and we can talk about them.
Cool. Well, thanks for that opening, Justin. That's awesome to give people a little bit of context.
Sure.
And last month we chatted to Tony Hughes and we touched on a little bit of outbound prospecting and outbound selling. But we're going to go a little bit deeper today with you on that. And just for those who are joining, if you have questions, chuck them in the Q&A and we'll cover them off probably as we go if they're relevant. Otherwise, we might leave a few to the end as well. So Justin, just to kick things off, I suppose, what made you so good at this? Like, what made you so good at outreach and cold prospecting, and what made you better than others who were doing it?
It's really interesting, right? Because when I was very young, like about 13, 14, 15, I got really involved in Adobe Photoshop. And there was a course out here at UCSB, and Kai Kraus from Kai's Power Tools came out. And I had a tower computer, and I was deep on Photoshop, and I was using the Photoshop UX and UI. I had like a vintage camera, and I painted all the panels with Godzilla, and I like made it look like it had been painted on the camera. And I spent hours photoshopping this thing. Well, to do that, I had to go really deep in the user interface. And so then I got in the music business and I was very deep into recording. So I was using Pro Tools and Logic and these different user interfaces. So
Mm.
when all the whiz bang sales tech came out, like Outreach.io and SalesLoft and Zant and Groove and Zoom Info and Sales Navigator, I was like, wow, These are sort of these cool user interfaces with all this cool stuff I can do. Let me learn all the features and what are the power users. And I read Max Altschuler's book, Hacking Sales, and I took courses by Scott Britton from Troops.ai. And I just learned, I just like, I want to know everything about these tech stacks. And so, I guess the average rep is using a Gmail and a phone call. Well, I'm trying to automate my phone calls, trying to get direct cell phone numbers. I'm using InsideSales.com to get local area presence. I've got third-party agencies I'm hiring to do appointment setting. So I'm just switched on and all about this stuff, reading all the books, all the technical sides, studying sales operations, getting deep into Salesforce to pull the reports. And so I think there was just an amount of technical aptitude.
Mm.
I'm more like a sales operations person, in a sales reps DNA. So I've got the work ethic and the willingness to bang the phone and do the emails, but I'm also like really curious about ways to get the tech to work better. And so I think that confluence. I also have a brother who's an engineer at Google, so I kind of just interested in software overall. So I kind of equate this to outrunning a bear. It's not that I'm necessarily better, but if like we're both outrunning a grizzly bear, and you have better cleats or better Nikes, but I get a moped, game over. You're gonna get eaten by the bear, right? So I had these experiences where I would crack something and I would do the work of like 3 months of work, but I would do it in a week because I figured this system out. Right? I could send like an ungodly amount of email, or I figured out this calling technique that just suddenly brought this fissure of opportunities down in the company. And so I had those experiences many times. Through myself or a piece of technology or a partner, I was able to get dramatic amounts of scale. If any of you are familiar with technologies like Connect and Sell, where you can literally in 1 hour do 200 dials, like they're dialing offshore and switching you when they connect. And so, there's these quantum leap technologies now that are available. And so I think that's it in a nutshell. The original name of the book was TQ, Technology Quotient, and Tony talks about this. There's EQ, and we're all trying to be more empathetic, and there's IQ, which we know scientifically now we can develop our neuroplasticity, Lumosity, or playing Sudoku or Go. I mean, you can at an adult age improve your mind. And language learning, you can learn languages. Look at the CIA. People are learning Romanian perfectly in their 40s, so they can go be stationed over there, right? So you think about it. You got Berlitz, and you've got these different language where the famous one is escaping me right now, famous language learning company. So the point is you can develop your technical quotient. You can fuse with your stack. If you use Salesforce a lot, you'll get better. If you use G Suite a lot, believe it or not, like Google Sheets, there's commands in there, there's shortcuts, you can get better. So what my work is really saying is don't avoid the technology. If we get the self-driving Uber, keep your job. Be the person sitting in the Uber, analyzing it, training the algorithms, right? Just kind of upskill. And so that's been my mission.
Right. So, basically what you were doing was operating a much higher level of efficiency because you were augmenting what, one team would just be on the phones doing cold calls and they'd be doing, one every 5 minutes, whereas you were using an auto dialer that was then putting you through. So you're just able to operate at 10 times what everyone else was doing.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge reason. Babbel, Duolingo. I'm trying to Rosetta Stone. That was it. I had to get that name. I have friends who would work there. Yeah. So there's efficiency, but then there's effectiveness. So I also took a scientific method because I'm also the grandson of a nuclear physicist. Go figure. I'm the only non-scientist in my family. So I thought, wow, let's just use the scientific method. So what we do? I'm going to try 30 subject lines. I'm going to try 50 opening lines. I'm going to try 75 CTAs. I'm going to blast them all through these sequencers. And once I'm done with my testing, like Thomas Edison, 4,000 filaments to get the incandescent bulb, I should know. And I did. I send 30 subject lines. Number 2, it's the highest open rate. Now I get the open rate. Now I change the opening line. Now I change the call to action. I started just testing these puzzle pieces. And then some VCs hired me at a company called Outbound Works. We raised a few million. We got to go nuts. We had 100 instances of outreach. We sent millions of emails, and we just did this for 100 customers. And then I really saw it plain as day. Okay. It's like, dropping a ball. There's gravity. If you make the subject line look like this, you make the image, put an image here. I started to Bob Ross, like email sending. And now I've built systems around what I saw. What's really crazy is Jeremy Donovan at salesloft.com, the chief strategy officer there, SVP of strategy, has actually done the science and tested on 6 million of email. And when I read his book, I was just shocked. I had the chills because of some of the stuff I just figured out, like the word empirical, just by doing, by just
Mm.
looking at the data myself, right? If you play basketball for 20,000 hours, you're probably going to have similar thoughts on the game than someone else who did that, right? I should pick an Australian sport like cricket or footy, right?
New Zealand.
Uh, New Zealand. What's down in New Zealand? You have footy, you have
Rugby,
rugby?
rugby is
Rugby.
probably number one.
Okay, yeah. So think about someone who's played rugby for 20,000 hours and then somebody who's reading a book on rugby and that difference. I've literally done 20,000 hours of cold calls.
Yeah.
I'm 40, but I've been in sales since I was 21. So yeah, it's if you do it enough, there's things that appear to the doer.
Yeah. So, okay, Justin, I guess for some companies though, like imagine you're a really early stage bootstrap kind of company and you're currently operating at, basically just phone and email. What's next? Like practically where should they be spending their time in your view to get to that next level?
So I have a guide called the Justin Michael Method that I just give away, and I have a mastermind group. So if you're in this class today, here's the good news. Contact Alex. I'll give you the guide. I'll let you in the group. I would say it's coming up with different methods of sending emails, experimenting with the length of your email, the subject lines of your email, maybe pictures or GIFs or what you're going to put in it, and doing some manual testing of some different methods and scripts. If that starts to work, there's some pretty affordable platforms like Lemlist or reply.io, Apollo, PersistIQ. You can go to G2 Crowd or Capterra and put in sales engagement platforms, SEPs. Even HubSpot has outbound now. Cirrus Insight does. Yesware. You want to start tracking your pixels. So as you're sending these tests, you see how many opens you're getting. Well, that's cool. You're no longer just firing email and wondering,
Mm.
is anybody opening? You can see. Now, if you can see if people are opening it already, you send 5 different styles of email. This one got 20 opens. Okay, I'm going to do more of this. So there's some basic things. You can take a free trial of Yesware, plug it in, start tracking your email. Free trial of Cirrus Insights, start scheduling some of this stuff in advance, like moving toward an automated place of I'm going to write 5 emails to 200 people and I'm going to set it and forget it and see how it performs. That's the next step. Manual testing, paper prototype, and then scale. That's what I would go. I would definitely look at ways to use LinkedIn and testing the type of searches that you're doing. I don't know if you have Premium or Sales Navigator or you have some system in LinkedIn, but really starting to consider your ideal customer profile, the type of titles they have, and starting to conduct messaging tests. And then phone numbers, looking in your LinkedIn network and looking at your first degree, all your potential prospects, and look closer at the contact field. The phone number is often right there. The cell phone's there. It's just right in there. I have my cell phone number right there. So you're talking about free. You've got a Gmail account for free. You probably have some phone numbers of first degree prospects. You probably can pick up a free trial of some software that can do some basic automation. And this is if just you're an SMB. If you're in a company, you probably actually have some of this cool stuff. You just might not have known that you could use your HubSpot and it has an outbound sequencer that you could use. So go Google that, read about it, try it, right? Step one is the go from avoiding the tech to embracing. I'm going to learn something about this. That would be my main encouragement from this this
Mm.
little
Mm.
masterclass.
And we've just had a comment actually coming from Ollie who said he's been using Yesware targeting cold audiences with great success. He says 7% meeting rate from completely cold emails.
That's awesome. So I'm not sure the system that you're using, Ollie, but if you want my guide, I'll give you some things that are super hyper short email. Now, here are a couple things you can do. If you think about this, it's really interesting. Okay, if you put an image in the email, you probably get in the spam folder. But if you put it on the second or third touch, an image is processed by the brain 60,000 times faster than text. So visuals out of your deck, a visual from your website, something you want them to see that's small, under 100 kilobytes, under 500 kilobytes, nested in the email will increase open rates. That's a pretty cool thing. I create Venn diagrams where I show the competitive landscape. That's kind of in my guide. Helps people very quickly see your features and where they're looking at your competitive set. This is very good for SaaS and technology companies.
Mm.
And I don't know if cold calling is a piece of this, but I also developed a whole cold calling method. And you want to think about getting cold calling data. So I don't know who on the phone has Lucia. It's big in Australia and New Zealand.
Yep.
You can see the cell phone number, right? Calling the switchboards, you can get tired. It's very arduous. But if you have a direct phone number, what do you leave on the voicemail? Oh, so the human brain looks at a 3-paragraph email, these templates that are on the market, it takes 13 seconds to process it. Make it 3 sentences. Make it so short, your marketing department won't approve. Well, if you're an SMB, you kind of do what you want. Experiment with hyper short email, and here's why. TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook Messenger, Instagram, text, Twitter, WhatsApp. Where am I going with this?
Hmm.
It's all 2 or 3 sentences. I didn't say, hey, Alex, and then write him 3 paragraphs. I mean, we were interacting before this call. He shot me a few sentences, so concise. I looked at it. In a few seconds, I knew exactly what we're going to do on the show. That's what your prospects want to see from email. And when you hit them up, you don't have to give them the great American novel again. I have to make this good for international, right? I don't know if there's a great Australasia novel something everyone in New Zealand has to read as a child, but certainly in America, we all have to read, Ernest Hemingway and, F. Scott Fitzgerald and, Steinbeck. And right, we have these things, not for the email. Like make it look like a text message, make it colloquial, conversational. You'll be shocked at how much better it does. And then test them. And the thing is, like, people take this approach to email that it has to be this long expository paragraph thing, right? If you're dating and you meet someone, you say, look, I looked on book. I know you love In Excess. I got you a signed copy of Michael Hutchins' In Excess record from 1986. I spent $182 on it. It's great to meet you. Here's the record. You want a drink? I mean, how creeped out this date would be with you? We do that. We think so much. We study the whole business. It's the perfect client. You're the perfect client. Great job on your award. I went through your whole page. I looked at your LinkedIn, your Twitter. It's like, whoa. What? Just shoot them a quick text. Like, just say like, look, our product does this. No BS. It can help you in this way. What do you think? You'll be amazed. It's low friction for you. It's low response for them. They can say pound sand. If they say no, ask for a referral. Sure. Hey, thanks for being nice to me. Okay, great. It's not for you. Do you know anyone? Anyone who could use this widget, this thing I do? Getting referrals all the time. So this is where I'm radically different. The whole world is trying to do marketing. All the emails look like a tax form, government, like it's their dissertation for their master's degree. And I'm coming in here and I'm sending these just ugly little texts, and it's going crazy. So you get the open rates goes 80%. Well, now it's not converting. It's not setting the meetings. The person using yes words getting 7%. Here's what I change. Make sure the messaging has emotional resonance. Just like we processed those pictures 60,000 times, we came up with cave paintings, the Maori, right? We're talking about being in the bush, right? The outback, right? I don't think people in the outback are sending a multi-paragraph email. It's not necessary. They're looking at the stars and the animals. Like the point here is you need the story, not to just say, hey, we generated 230% growth. We increased the margin by 15%. A human being gets emotional and then uses those statistics to justify the rationale. So you need to show like the before after picture. Like, this guy had the dad bod, but now he has the P90X, gets this, exercise machine. Now he's ripped, looks like The Rock, looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're going to show the before and the after, the pain they're frustrated by, challenged by, ripping their hair out. And then they met me and I did this service for them, and look at the after picture. That's the problem, is that just being short and gimmicky gets you the opens. But if you want to convert it, it's there's got to be a pain you solve. There's got to be meat to it, and you have to trigger the pain. Because if you just hit them with pleasure messages, like most marketing, right? Game changing for your company, revolutionize your revenue. It's just like, used car ads on the TV. It's not going to help you.
Yeah, I think that's such a good. I think there's a few really important points in there that I want to kind of stress. Is one, the shortness of email and even LinkedIn messaging, any kind of outreach. That's something that is often a challenge for people to get to, because they're tied to the long emails that they've been doing for a long time. And, with a lot of clients I've worked with, 50, 60 clients this year. And one of the first things we change with them is much shorter outreach, much shorter. And suddenly the results go way up. And I think your point around the emotional resonance of that message is also crucial. What are your thoughts on, because something we've been seeing working really well is kind of cost or risk-based messaging. So reduce the risk of X, or, cut your costs kind of messaging. What's your thoughts on that?
I think you're going to go make money, save money, reduce risk. And another one is satisfy a government regulation.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, and it's like that's true, but it's still going to be the way you tell the story. So
Okay.
it's just like 20% cost efficiency, but it's maybe like, wow, like our costs were spiraling out of control and we have all these like duplicative costs with vendors. It was really frustrating. We were hemorrhaging cash. Like I was so annoyed. I was upset to see that I had to pay double or triple tax on that, or because my systems weren't integrated. I had
Mm,
these additional costs I couldn't foresee, and then I couldn't pay my employees the bonus, and like the issues and implications of the pain of the cost reduction, and then
yeah.
show them the cost reduction. So there's an emotional story attached and a case study around how that benefit appeared for the people who feel something related to the outcome that you bring. And that's
Yeah.
what makes it compelling. Tony always says the compelling business case. Compelling is an emotional word, right? And there are CFO types who just go 15%, fit, and they'll just take it. But most people need a story.
Yeah. I think you're right there. And using customer stories in your messaging can be quite powerful as well, rather than just telling, show through a story. Um,
Yeah.
you know, what's changed in your view from, last year to this year from an outreach perspective?
So those same tests that Jeremy Donovan did on SalesLoft emails, essentially right in C19, the email response rates went down 35%. So I think there
Okay.
was just huge saturation. You had 6 out of 9 verticals gone. The service industry's gone, restaurant industry, aviation, all sorts like hospitality. But the phone kind of did well, and then LinkedIn went from site number 36 in the US to site 16. It probably jumped in Australia too. Everybody's on there looking for work, wanting to
Mm,
collaborate. LinkedIn becomes a very powerful channel. It turns out that people getting bombarded by hundreds more messaging and panicking and having to handle so much in their life, their kids are home, it's the same problem. They're just getting bombarded with these long and these uncertain times, these huge paragraph emails. So you have to be even shorter and even more concise and not hope you're doing well. Just boom, straight to the point. How can you help? People have like 7 slots. This is what Mike Bosworth said. And so they have a job to be done. They're working remotely. They're trying to solve a problem. If you're personal, you know, it's not enough. It has to be personally relevant. It has to be part of the relevant pain. And that's kind of what I teach is you got to nail the relevance before you think of the personalization. Otherwise, the
right.
personalization is all for naught.
Right. And let's talk about personalization for a bit, because there's this sort of, I suppose, a little bit of a trade-off between how much personalization you can do and how much volume you can do. So what are your thoughts on that? Something that, I find work really well for me is I do like persona-based outreach. So, I'll pick a kind of a reasonably tight persona and write messaging and sequencing around that. What are your thoughts? How can you still be personal whilst doing it at scale?
Yeah, so personalization up to 20% is about all you need over a
Okay.
sequence and to a specific campaign. Um, if there are different stakeholders, like if there's a VP of IT and VP of marketing, VP of sales, there's a different pain and outcome per. But if all those titles care about the same thing, it's most relevant that the pain you solve is relevant and you have social proof. So if you're contacting Pepsi and you've helped Coca-Cola put in a better CRM system, which has created a 15% increase in profit, probably everybody at Pepsi cares about that more than you knowing what sports team they like in their favorite TV show,
Right.
or the fact that you both went to school together or you have friends in common. Although LinkedIn's built its whole platform on that level of personalization, hyper personalization, it's because that stuff's cool and we like it and appreciate that. But it's if you don't also solve their pain in a compelling way, they're not going to give you time. So my systems are like dead short, nail the pain. We can personalize later, but I want to make sure that you are solving a problem for them for similar clients. Now people go, hey, look, the Bank of Australia got it did great with it, and they go, we're not the Bank of Australia, we're this little company. Of course they got it, they're the Bank of Australia. You don't want your social proof points to be companies that are so far out of their scope. Salesforce could do it. It's Salesforce, like the best company in the world. Like it's not a good comparison. Make
Yeah.
sure the people that you reference who have benefited from your product or service are relevant to that persona. So definitely go through the ICP, get the ideal prospect, the ideal client profile, customer profile, go through the personas, break down what each person cares about, understand the pain or latent pain, understand things you could personalize that are relevant to the business problem you solve, but also see if there's a consensus driven one, like a master sequence or linguistic pattern.
Mm, okay. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. Is I think people often worry about coming across impersonal, but what you're saying is you actually don't need to be super hyper personal. It's just enough where you're speaking the language that they care about, speaking about the kind of problems, pains that they have. And you don't need to be referencing their favorite sports team or where they went to school in your messaging, because that's actually not that important.
Yep, and you can throw it on there as icing on the cake. Like, okay, here's a perfect example, right? So I am trying to build my brand as a speaker and author and trainer and all the stuff that I do with my book coming out and a U.S. publishing label. There is a social media coach. You should check out. Her name is String. You can't miss her. String Win, and she's in Brisbane, Australia. And she is #3 LinkedIn voice in Australia multiple times. She's sponsored by Lenovo. She gets 1 million hits per post. I was like, what? Stop the phone. I contacted her. I was like, I need 1 million per post. I don't care what I have to pay you, right? If she contacts me and knows that I have this problem, is that I have 35,000 followers on LinkedIn, but I'm only getting 600 views per. So I can pay LinkedIn after I've spent 15 years getting to the max. 30,000 is the max. And I could pay them for ads so people can see my stuff. That seems a little ridiculous. Like Facebook, I'm like, I spent, 15 years getting this. Can you coach me to see like how often should I post? What should my post be? Should it be a PDF, a video? What should it like? She gave me all these cool techniques. It worked. I 3x to my viewership. I've got business coming in. But she was so relevant to the pain
Mm.
that it wouldn't have mattered if she interrupted me or how she contacted me because I needed that help. I always joke she could knock on my door in a ninja outfit and hold a sign. And if it said, I get 1 million views per LinkedIn, this is legit, I'd be like, okay, I hope she doesn't like murder me in cold blood, but I do need the views. So come on
Mm.
in, have tea, right? I like very Monty Python. I'm going crazy with it because I'm showing you that if she held up the sign and said, do you want a boat? I have a yacht for sale. I get seasick. I'm not interested. It doesn't matter how free boat right now, Charlie Munger's yacht for you. And I'd be like, nope, because it's not relevant, right? So I would think about these examples as you're writing emails. I'd love to hear from the guy who's using Yesware if this is making sense.
Yeah,
You're
I hear
writing.
I hear what you're saying there. It's more about targeting the right problem than necessarily the perfectness of your email. You know, the message, yes, is important, but if you're nailing the problem, it's not going to matter too much if there's a little spelling error in there, or it's not maybe written in the perfect grammar in your sentence. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. So when the grammar is bad, it performs better. When there's spelling errors, it performs better because we're in the age where everybody's using that automation. And if
Mm.
it looks perfect, they kind of question it. Hi, John, comma, in these uncertain times. And it just looks like this template thing that everyone's getting. And so even if you did literally write that, you're not going to be rewarded here for good writing. You're going to be rewarded here for solving the problem, meeting them where they're at,
Yeah.
walking a mile in their shoes. That's what they're looking for. People are going to work every day in every country on earth, not play,
Yeah.
right? So and work means a challenge and objective toward a goal. So if you get in the if I'm banging away on a wall and you give me a hammer, I'm like, great. And then you give me a mallet, then you give me a sledgehammer, then you give me you know, the Elon Musk boring device to bore a hole. I'm like, hey, come on in. Like this is better and better because I'm trying to hammer through that wall. People aren't, I love Tony says this, people are not bored alone and looking for friends, right? They're actually sitting there away from their families, away from all the things they want to do, doing this thing to earn a living. And the economic whip is just going. So like be relevant and interrupt them and then immediately help them do what they're doing and do it better. Make
Mm.
money, save money, reduce risk, get out of the problem of the government regulation is the best one. Steve Richard of Foresight talks about that.
Mm.
And that's the nature of my cold calls, my visuals, my email sequences. It's like, let's interrupt the stranger and let's let them be relaxed and say, wow, oh my gosh, this actually is relevant. Wow. This is not a course for a home-based plumbing business. This is a system that can reduce my costs. And it actually does for similar customers. Okay, yes, let's have a quick meeting and sell the
Mm.
meeting, not the product.
Yeah, and bringing it to cold calling here as well. That's something that I often help people with is they have this fear of cold calling, and what they typically try and do is before we start working together is they'll try and call someone, start selling on that very first call, and they're trying to go too deep rather than just get on the call and book in a meeting, and get in and out fast. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so my cold calling framework is you call someone and you ask them what they're in charge of. And then you sit back and let them tell you how they're currently doing it. And then you validate them. And then you wait and you let them talk. You point the spotlight on them.
Yep.
You figure out what they're in charge of, what they're powerful of. I have this cold call framework, which is called route, ruin, multiply. I call them and I make sure, are you the person that handles IT? Are you in charge of IT? No, I'm not. That's, Eve. Okay. Can I call Eve now? Can you refer me to Eve? Can I say I talk to you? No, 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 just go. So there's a referral, but they say I am, and then they kind of exert their power. Okay, I sell IT. Oh, we're good. We have a vendor. Which vendor do you have? Okay. Oh, how'd you stand it up? Really interesting. Yeah, they're great. Can you tell me more about that? How's it working for you? Stop. They start to talk about how well it's going. Oh, but the customer service is bad. Right, and you'll see this in my guide. And basically, they start to convince themselves that they want to change. They start to reveal because 99% of the people that call them disagree with them. They say, hey, Alex, I'm calling from Cloud Task. I got these SDRs you could use. I immediately start talking about me, my service. If you mention how you do it, I'm mentioning how I'm different and better. I'm trying to convince you it's this battle, there's friction. Why don't I just stop and ask you how you do it, validate you for what you inherited, understand how you're currently doing it. And then as you trust me and you keep talking, you're like, here's a safe person I'm talking with. At one point the polarity shifts and you say, wait, what do you do again? And that's where I say, oh, I have the service. And then they're receptive because you've gone into agreement and validation. It's very much like a keto role. First is just sitting there and duking it out on the call until somebody hangs up.
Mm. So I guess what you're saying there is rather than going in and trying to sell what you do, is just go in and understand what the other person does and learn a little bit about them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do this weird thing. It's like a Jedi mind trick. I'm like, how's it working for you? They're like, well, it's great. I love it. But oddly, it's legacy and bad customer service, and the thing's broken. And what do you do? Oh, it's like a vampire. Once they ask you, and then you come in, and then I do this multiply thing where I say, hey, leave it. I know you invested in that, you inherited that, you spent all this money, it's been there for 3 years, leave it there. Plug our solution in and multiply the effectiveness of that stack, and kind of sell it in. Beachhead turbocharger approach. I really like that.
So what are your thoughts, Justin, on selling on the first call versus just getting a meeting on the first call?
So what started to happen when I started using these techniques, I actually started to just close the whole sale in the first call because they'd
Right.
never in their life had somebody call them and validate them, understand them, and let them talk. It just never happened. Everybody other call is, you don't know me. The reason for my call. Can I have 26 seconds? It's I'm taking from you. I'm talking about me, my solution. I'm going to hook you. I'm doing none of that. What happens now is they really just push to then have the meeting and they want to have a call. I guess conceivably in a small business, if you have a transactional product, you could just close the sale. You
Mm.
just close it. If you get them to trust you enough and talk to you enough and you're actively listening and they're going through the pains and they currently do this, they may take enough interest in you that you can just start to position the product right there. You could literally get all the way to a proposal. I was 27. I was selling SaaS for nonprofits. I call 100 executive directors, 7 out of 10 answered the phone, and they all had a competitive solution, and they all said, not interested, we use something else. So I thought of Dale Carnegie, and I thought, okay, let's say their name, Alex McNaughton. Okay, you could probably write your last name by 5 years old, 6, 7. It's not Alex, much easier, but McNaughton, that's the sound of your name. So Dale Carnegie figured out the most beautiful sound in the human language to a prospect is their name. The second thing I figured out is the only thing a prospect can do during work is control what they can control. It's not much. If they can buy from you and they have this little budget, 25 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, if they're C-level, they can't even spend more than 100 grand without a committee. But they have this little control sphere. And if you can ask them what they control, and then you're trying to sell them something, but they do it already a certain way. Well, rather than fight of how they do it and make them wrong, think about their life. They inherited that job, they got hired, they have a certain tech stack, certain services and products that they have to use that they didn't pick. What if you
Mm.
hear about what they're doing, how they're doing it, take interest, be curious, and as they tell you about it, human nature is like they have a self-improvement and dissatisfaction gene, and they'll want to find out, do you think that's good, or that's how we have to do it? And they'll open up to you in these remarkable ways. And then the best part is when they do, you don't say rip it out or throw the baby away. You just say, hey, that's great. Look at this other thing you can do also. You got all that IT stuff in there. Yeah, average enterprise has 91 vendors in the tech stack.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really interesting, Justin. I think the curiosity piece is so crucial, I think. I heard a stat that, between 1/3 and 50% of the time is how much a salesperson should actually do the talking on a call, as little as possible, basically. If you're talking for more than half a call, you're talking too much. And I think, the power of questioning, open-ended questioning, getting to know someone, both as not just as a business, but as a personal level too, showing some genuine interest is so much more powerful and such a good approach.
Yeah, I've just never seen it anywhere. I mean, I've seen one other trainer, Ashley Early, talks about, she's calling these big IT companies, and I'm calling in regards to your IT analytics. Who's responsible for that, or who's in regards to that? Who would you point me? So she is routing. It's good, and then she's enabling. So she is doing that too. There's side frameworks, but the majority of the frameworks are, why you, why now. The reason for my call is, and you go in and you just convince, and you debate and you argue, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, good point, Justin. I like that. If there's any other questions from any other attendees, Ollie, I've just seen Ollie say 100%, but I think that was for a point you made a couple of minutes ago, Justin. If there's any other questions, send them through now. Otherwise, Justin, I just want to ask you one final question from me is what are you most excited for from a sales perspective and sales outreach perspective? Maybe like a new tech stack or
Yeah, for me, it's the augmented intelligence. It's having an assistant. So during this call, it brings me the last 4 interviews that Alex McNaughten's done, and the guests and some of the insights and some little snippets, and say, hey, I actually, my AI is telling me that you interviewed Tony and these other 2 guests. That's interesting. I want to comment on that. During the entire sales process, almost like a heads up display in a car that's showing you how many miles per hour. It can be telling me, it's like I can see my computer battery. It could tell me, hey, here's some cool things happening in New Zealand on the tech startup market. Here's some questions. It crunches all that data. It says, here's some questions that could be cool to bring up on a sales training call for SMBs in New Zealand, right? It could warn me in my Salesforce forecast, hey, here's 3 deals where you haven't followed up in 3 weeks. I don't know. I got 200 deals in there. I don't remember. It can do the things my brain can't. It can do crunching, quantity, learning, synthesis, these type of like an assistant that I can, like the movie Her, that can just like live in my life as I sell and fix things for me and remind me and tap me like a Siri, but it's interactive. That's the future of where the AI and ML can go. And I'm involved with some really cool projects around that. That's exciting for me, and it's exciting for you, because that the price of that technology has come down, which is baked into our everyday lives.
So, it's basically real-time intelligence that's going to help you on your sales calls, in a meeting, any kind of situation, especially now that more sales is being done remotely. So it's so easy to do. You just have it open on another screen. It's going to give you that additional level of insight that's going to help you drive conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
So,
awesome.
I think everyone on the phone, if you're overwhelmed or intimidated by technology, get to know it, get 5% better. Think of Excel. We all use about 5% of Excel, and it gets us by. So if you learn a little bit more about your tech stacks, if you work for someone else, you're a little bit more hireable. So you're a little more irresistible because you're doing operations, you're kind of in this thing. Like take the initiative, go test some of this stuff. Try to get a budget going. Go to explore it, start to use it. If you use it, maybe the rest of your team will use it. If you have a little budget to test this stuff, it can be an advantage for you in your market. And there's a lot of cool writing. I'm releasing a book on it. I just want to offer everybody here to ping me or ping Alex. I'll give you my guide. I'll put you in my group. I got great Aussies in there. I got a guy, Terry, from Chat Metrics from the Gold Coast down there. He's loving it. He's using some power dialers, right? He's doing these things. It's called Orum HQ, ORUM.
Oh, yeah, I know them.
You can dial 10 phone numbers at a time. I go on here in my group, and I have every 20 seconds people see me connecting. It looks like George Jetson here.
Just had a question come in from Matt Shand. He said, having recently joined a friend's software startup as the NZ sales consultant, we're starting to get good enterprise growth in sales. However, we want to reach out to the SME market, and we're trying to decide whether to bring on telesales teams or utilize third-party suppliers to set up meetings. What would you recommend?
Gosh, okay. Give me that one more time. I'm sorry.
So Matt has joined a software startup as an NZ sales consultant.
I see
They're
it. I
getting,
see
oh,
it.
you see it now? Okay, cool.
Yep, it's on it. So they're getting good enterprise growth. They want to reach out to this, so the small and medium business market. Yeah, so this is interesting because I'm an advisor for cloudtask.com. Shameless plug, check it out. If you use a third-party shop, look at G2 Crowd, look at their ratings and their reviews and get good references and make sure they can do it. If not, you're probably better to in-house it, even if it's slow to ramp, because you can kind of crack the funnel. If it
Mm,
takes a lot of product market expertise, it may be hard to train a third-party team, but there's kind of 5,000 offshore teams that do meetings. So just make sure they're willing to do a test where they have a similar client where they've done well for, where they have very good character references and good results references. So you're not just pouring money in your fireplace. And if you can't find one of those that works, consider hiring talent internally. Consider just, taking it on yourself and the tech stack and learning it, or finding like a head of sales development or an inside sales team specialist to come in. Right now, you might, if you can't afford that, you might have someone who's side hustling somewhere else. You might take it on commission only. Might work it part time for you and help you nail it. Someone who's a specialist.
mm.
These are some ideas. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. My 2 cents, Matt, would be try a few things yourself and do some tests, kind of like Justin was talking about earlier. It's just run some tests, and get a little bit of traction success yourself before going down the third party route, because it's going to make it easier when you do. If you configure a few things out yourself rather than just relying on a third party company to crack it for you, it's going to be harder. Just got a comment from Ollie. Ollie said, Alex, Justin, got to run. Appreciate your insights. All the best and go kick. I think he means some ass. Awesome, guys. Any final questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up here. Justin, it's been great to have you on. I think there's been a lot of insight, and I think there's a lot there for people to kind of process and digest. So I think your offer for letting people into kind of some of the groups you're on would be fantastic, and I think greatly appreciated.
Yeah, so I guess they're asking for a copy of the guide. Yeah, Jackie, if you can hit me up on LinkedIn or find me or ping Alex, or I can give Alex a copy and he can forward it. But yeah, it's gonna be called Tech Powered Sales. It's out in June, pre-order in November. I have a mastermind group called the Sales Borgs, like Seller and Cyborg. Tony came up with it. I do cold calls every day. You can watch me do cold calls. We tear down emails, and I'm here to help everyone in the world get their emails and their phone calls responded to. That's my mission.
Awesome, Justin. Hey, great mission, and thanks again for having you on, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate your time.
Bye.